Hi, Charlie here. Your house is probably the most important thing that you own. It's where you and your family live and feel safe. And of course where your gaming room is too. But there are lots of external threats to your house at all times. This could be in the form of Mother Nature with flooding, fires, and hurricanes. Or in the form of other people, for example, home invaders. It turns out that some people go to extreme lengths to make sure their house is protected from anything. A lot of the time, these crazy precautions lead to their neighbors calling them crazy. But more often than not, the precautious homeowner ends up getting the last laugh. Dam Island. In 2016, Texas was hit with storms never seen before. Thunderstorms and heavy rain hit Texas, and it was expected it would go on for many weeks. It broke records being the worst weather the state had ever seen. In less than 24 hours, entire towns were flooded with 19 inches of rain. And this was just the beginning. Many people got lost and dragged away in the flooding. Roads and bridges also collapsed. And millions of dollars of damage was being created every single day. Residents of one town named Brazoria grabbed their stuff and evacuated. Except one man. This is Randy Wagner, and he stayed behind. Not because he was crazy, but because he'd taken extra precautions. 2 days before, when the flood had just been announced, he quickly went on the internet. That was when he found a company named Aquadam. They sold gigantic rubber tubes that could be filled with water. This could create a temporary barrier around any home and stop flooding. Randy was suspicious and thought it was too good to be true. But he was desperate as he did not want to evacuate and did not want his home to be destroyed. He took a big risk and bought the largest aquadam he could. It was a massive 30 inches and 450 feet. This really broke the bank as it cost him $8,300. He then drove a 520-mile round trip to Louisiana. He picked up the aquadam from Louisiana and it weighed 800 pounds. This slowed him down on the way back and he was nervous he would not get home before the storm hit. 3 days later, water from the storm began to flood Randy's neighborhood. He quickly got the aquadam and with his family unraveled it around his house. He then used 2 gasoline-powered engines and water from a nearby ditch to fill up the aquadam. In just 12 hours, the rubber tubing was filled with watertight water. It was now ready to be put to the test, and Randy would see if he wasted $8,000 or made the purchase of a lifetime. Neighbors who were evacuating saw Randy putting up the aquadam. When they saw what Randy was doing, they began laughing. They said there's no way that's going to protect your house. They called him crazy and they thought he'd really lost the plot. But despite his neighbors mocking him, Randy continued to put faith in his idea. But just days later, the Brazoria County River, the River Brazos, began to climb from its banks. This caused the entire area to be totally flooded, all except one small island. Helicopter news cameras were baffled when they saw everyone's house had flooded except one. Of course, that house was Randy's. Randy Wagner's gamble really did pay off. His small green island stood out among the murky waters. His neighbors who called him crazy all had their houses flood, but Randy and his family were safe behind the 30-inch dam. And it turned out this was one of the best investments Randy had ever made. While it cost him $8,300, it saved him $150,000 in repairs. And he didn't even have to take out any flood insurance. All while his neighbors had to shell out millions of dollars because of the damage. The Eye of the Storm. The South Carolina coast is home to many beautiful beachfront mansions. But among the mansions is one very unusual house. The house may look like a large egg on its side, but while many people point and laugh at this house, it's actually got an amazing design. You see, this house is hurricane-proof, hence the house's name, the Eye of the Storm. The South Carolina coast gets a lot of hurricanes. In 1989, designer George Paul's parents lost their house to a hurricane. Their house was on the very same site as the Eye of the Storm. George and his parents were devastated, and that's when George vowed to never let this happen again. So George decided to design the ultimate hurricane-proof house. To do this, George first inflated a large device known as an airform. This is a 37-foot gigantic inflatable. The inside of this was then sprayed with concrete and lined with reinforced steel. This meant that the walls and ceiling were one solid piece. This makes it pretty much impossible for the house to break into multiple pieces. Also, as the house is circular, it means wind simply goes around it. Its ground level also has 8 large openings. This means that storm winds and waters can simply go through the house, but it won't go through the interior or damage the top levels. Some neighbors called this house an eyesore and complained. But when it comes to hurricane season, they really can't afford to laugh. The house has remained intact against every hurricane it's faced so far, whereas neighboring houses have been destroyed many times. The Concrete Ark. This house is one of the most secure houses in the world. It's not just natural disaster proof or human proof, it's everything proof. The entire thing is made of reinforced concrete and bulletproof glass. The only way to get in is using its concrete drawbridge. The house can be found on a hillside in Poland. The windows can be blocked out by more concrete. This house provides the ultimate level of security, but you also get amazing scenery all around you. Vicksburg Island. Back in 2011, the residents of Vicksburg, Mississippi were hit with major storms. Heavy rainfall entered the Mississippi River, and many suspected that this would cause the river to burst its banks. After all, the Mississippi River is famous for flooding. Normally, the river's main levees would be enough to protect Vicksburg from any flooding, but that was not the case in this storm. Residents soon found out that it was very likely the water would rise above the river's levees. So with no time to waste, homeowners began making their very own gigantic levees. Using diggers and vast amounts of earth and sand, they created their own levees around their homes. Other people in the area began laughing at those doing this. They thought they were being way too dramatic and over-precautious. After all, Vicksburg had not flooded in over 100 years. This meant there was only a 1% chance of the area flooding each year. Most of the neighborhood did not even have flood insurance because floods were so rare. But despite all of the judgment from their neighbors, these precautious Vicksburg residents kept making the levees. But within days, both the Mississippi and nearby Yazoo River burst their banks. This caused the town of Vicksburg to flood. Many homes and farms were destroyed. People who had taken no precautions evacuated and had to leave their homes to flood. But those who had created their own levees were safe and their homes were untouched. Before we move on, make sure you guys subscribe and press the notification bell too. It really does help me out. Underwater Fortress. This is one of the most secure homes in the world. It's located in Russia, facing out onto the Black Sea, and it's so secure that pretty much nothing can get to it. Some call this the ultimate house to survive a zombie apocalypse. The inside of the house is underground, but there's no obvious way to get in. There are even windows beneath the surface. This means you get an awesome view underwater. Some people may laugh at this house and think that it's over the top, but if a global apocalypse ever happens, I think this homeowner is going to be the one laughing. But would you want to live in this amazing bunker underground? I think it would be fun and very secure, but at times you might get just a little too isolated. Just Enough Room Island. Have you ever wanted to have your private island but couldn't afford it? Well, you might be able to afford this. This tiny piece of land is technically an island. The owner calls it Just Enough Room Island because that's what you get, just enough room. The island is found in Alexandria Bay, New York. There is no way to get to this island, meaning that you're very protected. You have to take a boat to actually get onto the island. This is yet another really great zombie-proof house. Some people who live near to this house actually do laugh at it sometimes, but I think that this house really is one of the most secure in the world. The Pole House. This house may look unsafe, but on the contrary, it's one of the most secure houses in the world. It is found in Australia, and the house sits above a 60-foot pole. This house takes security to a new level. It's pretty much impossible for any threats to get anywhere near your house. That's a good thing in Australia, seeing as you're prone to wildfires and dangerous animals at every turn. You also get amazing views of the Australian coast at all times. High Desert House. The high desert house looks like a supervillain's lair. It is found in the mountains of California and is owned by Jay and Beverly Doolittle. It was built in 1998, but they never told a soul about its existence. It was only until 2014 when they finally broke the news to the world about this secret house. The house is super secure. It blends into the rocks so well that from far away you can't even see it. If you didn't know it was here, then you'd likely never even see it. That makes this house incredibly secure. Also, unless you know all of the roads and pathways to get to it, there's no way you'd even make it to this house. But now it's time to make your voice heard. Leave a comment below which of these homeowners was the most genius. If you want some more amazing videos, then check out my second channel. But as always, thanks for watching. There are some more videos on screen right now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.